You are 17 when the war is still a voice on the radio and a map with pins in your father's study. Your town, Guben, sits on the Neisse River, half in Silesia and half in Brandenburg, and life here still runs on small, ordinary rhythms. You wake before your mother calls you because the smell of hot iron and leather from your father's wheelwright shop always reaches your room first. Joseph Vogel repairs cartwheels, wagon axles, and more now, requisitioned farm equipment for the army. He lost his left ear at Verdun and never talks about it unless someone asks a stupid question, and even then he only says, "It's still attached to my head, that's what matters." Your mother, Ilse, keeps the house running on ration coupons and stubbornness. Your younger sister, Greta, is 11 and follows you into the workshop asking why wheels are round, why iron is heavy, why the radio in the kitchen is only allowed to play one station. You tell her it's the law. She asks if laws can be wrong. You tell her to go help mother. At the workshop bench beside you most afternoons is Otto Reiner, your closest friend since primary school.
Otto's father runs the print shop 2 streets over, and Otto has spent his whole life around typeset letters, ink, and paper. Which is why, when the regional Hitler Youth office needs someone who can read maps and copy dispatch forms cleanly, Otto is the first name suggested. He hates it. He wanted to be a printer like his father, not a boy who traces borders that keep moving east. At night, after the shop closes and Greta is asleep, you and Otto climb to the loft above the wheelwright shop with a radio Otto rebuilt from spare tubes and copper wire he wasn't supposed to take from the print shop's old switchboard. Listening to foreign broadcasts is forbidden. You both know the posters, the warnings, the stories of neighbors reported for less. That is exactly why it feels necessary. The BBC's German service crackles through static, telling you things Berlin does not. Otto writes down numbers, place names, casualty figures, comparing them against what the newspapers print the next morning. One of them is inventing things, he says. Your father, passing beneath the loft one night with a lantern, hears enough to say only, "Usually both are, just not equally." In February 1943, the state radio announces 3 days of national mourning. Stalingrad has fallen. The announcer's voice tries to make surrender sound like sacrifice, defeat sound like legend. Your father closes the shop early that day and does not open it again until the following week.
He sits at the kitchen table with the newspaper folded shut in front of him, not reading it, just looking at it. You ask him what's wrong. He says, "Wrong is what happens when men stop asking questions and start following slogans instead." You don't fully understand him. You will. Your draft notice comes in April. You are 18. Otto's arrives the same week. His map skills have finally caught someone's attention in the wrong direction, and he's assigned as a reconnaissance clerk attached to a forward headquarters unit, close enough to the front that clerk stops meaning safe. Your mother packs more food than you can carry, and repeats the same 3 instructions until they stop making sense from repetition. Your father takes you into the workshop one final evening and hands you nothing. No medal, no keepsake, only words. "Don't confuse obedience with virtue," he says, "and don't let a uniform decide who you are for you." Training near Breslau is short, brutal, and efficient. You are taught to dig, to march, to strip and reassemble a rifle in the dark, to trust the man beside you before you trust yourself. Your platoon sergeant is Feldwebel Anton Kraus, 29 years old, a veteran of Poland and the First Russian Winter, with a scar across his jaw he never explains.
He drives you harder than the instructors, makes you dig positions 2 feet deeper than required, makes you repeat weapons drills until your hands do them without thought. One recruit complains that Kraus enjoys punishing them. Later you understand. He is trying to keep boys alive, using the only tools left to a sergeant who has already buried too many of them. Training ends with a week of live-fire exercises meant to simulate combat conditions, though nothing simulated prepares you for what combat actually withholds. The smell, the waiting, the way fear doesn't announce itself the way instructors describe. Kraus pulls you aside after one exercise, where you freeze for a half-second too long under mock artillery fire. He doesn't shout. He simply says, "That half-second is the only thing standing between you and every man beside you. Fix it here, where the mistake only costs pride." You spend the following nights running the drill in your head until the freezing stops. By June 1943, your unit moves east through Poland into Ukraine,
attached to a Panzer Grenadier division rebuilding near Kharkov after the brutal seesaw battles that retook the city that spring. The countryside surprises you. Endless wheat fields, villages of low wooden houses, dirt roads that turn to mud with a single afternoon of rain. Everything smells of diesel, dust, and something underneath that you eventually learn is simply the smell of an army that has been fighting in one place for 2 years. Your company is billeted for several weeks in a farming village south of Kharkov, waiting for orders while officers speak in confident tones about new weapons, Tiger and Panther tanks, a coming offensive that will restore the initiative in the east once and for all. Kraus listens to these briefings without expression. When a young lieutenant asks his opinion, Kraus says only, "I've heard restore the initiative twice before. Both times we walked backward afterward." You are quartered in the home of a farming family, an old man named Petro Ivanovich and his adult daughter, Oksana, whose husband was taken east by the retreating Red Army the previous year and never returned. Whether as soldier or prisoner or corpse, nobody in the house says. Petro barely speaks to any of you. Oksana does the cooking your unit's rations supplement, moving through her own kitchen like a guest in it. One evening you help carry water from the well without being asked, simply because your arms are free and hers are full. She says nothing, but the next morning there is an extra piece of bread on your mess tin that wasn't rationed to you. Otto, visiting from headquarters with dispatch papers, notices and grins. "Congratulations," he whispers. "She's decided you're almost human." You tell him to be quiet, but the bread sits differently in your stomach than the rest of the food does.
The weeks fill with rumor, the way the Normandy garrison and the stories you'd later hear filled with rumor of its own invasion. The offensive begins tomorrow. No, next week. No, the tanks aren't ready. The tanks are the finest weapons ever built. Nothing can stop them. Otto brings you fragments from headquarters he shouldn't share. "They're calling it Citadel," he says one night in the barn loft where you now do your forbidden radio listening instead of a house attic. A pincer. 2 armies close around Kursk like a fist. He pauses. "The Soviets know the plan. I've seen the reconnaissance reports. They've known for weeks." On the 5th of July, the offensive begins before dawn. You are attached to the southern pincer, advancing through the Belgorod sector into the deepest defensive belt anyone in your unit has ever seen. Minefields stacked behind minefields, anti-tank ditches, guns dug in so thoroughly they seem to rise directly out of the earth. The noise from the first hour never stops long enough to become memory in the normal way. It becomes a condition, like weather. Tanks you've been told are unstoppable burn in fields you cross on foot behind them. You dig, advance, dig again, each position gained costing more than the ground seems worth.
By the 11th of July, north near a village called Prokhorovka, word spreads through the ranks of the largest tank engagement anyone has witnessed. Hundreds of armored vehicles from both sides, fighting at ranges so close that gun barrels nearly touch. You are not there, but the smoke on the horizon and the endless columns of wounded moving past your position tell you enough. Kraus watches the smoke for a long moment and says, "That's not a battle being won, that's a battle being spent." Your own sector fights for a collective farm complex that changes hands 3 times in 2 days. Each time you retake it, there is less of it left standing. Between assaults, you and the other riflemen dig in among the wreckage of the previous attempt, sharing water and cigarettes with men from units you've never heard of, mixed together by the chaos of a front line that no longer holds a clean shape. A corporal beside you, no older than you are, keeps a photograph of a girl tucked inside his helmet lining and shows it to anyone who asks, as if repetition might keep the promise of seeing her again a little more real. 2 days later, he is one of the names Kraus reads aloud during the brief accounting of losses, and the photograph is never mentioned again. 2 days later, the offensive is canceled.
Not because the enemy broke, because reports arrive of a massive Allied landing in Sicily, and divisions are needed elsewhere. And the Eastern gamble that was supposed to restore the initiative is abandoned before it finishes proving whether it could have worked at all. Then the ground you thought for starts moving in the wrong direction. The Soviet counteroffensive begins within days, faster and wider than anyone briefed you to expect. Retreat is not announced as retreat. It is called elastic defense, shortening the line. Words Kraus repeats back with a flatness that makes junior officers avoid his eyes. You march and dig and abandon positions in the same week you built them. Villages you passed through advancing, you pass through again retreating. and the farming families who fed you extra bread now watch you leave with expressions you cannot read and don't ask about. In late September, your unit is ordered to hold a crossing point on the Dnieper River while engineers finish a pontoon bridge for units still stranded on the eastern bank. Otto's headquarters detachment is folded into the defense, too few clerks left to justify keeping him from a rifle. He finds you in the chaos near the riverbank, breathless, carrying a satchel he refuses to hand to anyone else. Inside are pages he's been writing for over a year. Not official dispatches, but his own account, in his own hand, of what he's actually seen versus what gets reported upward.
One day someone should know what actually happened here, he says. The same thing he told you back in the loft above your father's shop, a lifetime and a country away. Soviet artillery finds the crossing point that night. The barrage walks toward your section of the line in a pattern too precise to be luck. Someone has the range, exactly. You and Otto are in a shallow trench near the riverbank when a shell lands close enough to collapse part of the earthwork onto both of you. You come to with dirt in your mouth and a ringing silence where the noise of the world should be. Otto is beside you, conscious, one hand pressed against a wound low in his side that is bleeding faster than either of you wants to acknowledge. "The satchel," he says, before he says anything about the pain. You think he wants a medic. He shakes his head and points at the bag half buried beside him. You pull it free and press it against your chest without understanding yet what you're agreeing to. "Not the official version," he says. "The real one. Promise you'll give it to my mother. All of it. Even the parts that make us look small." Kraus reaches the collapsed section moments later, checking the wound with the same flat efficiency he brings to everything, and his face tells you what his voice doesn't need to. The pontoon bridge is under fire.
The order comes to fall back across it before it's destroyed, carrying only what can move on its own legs. Kraus says there is no way to carry Otto through open ground under that barrage and reach the bridge in time. You tell him you'll stay. Otto grabs your sleeve with more strength than his condition should allow. "Then the pages die here too," he says, and you hate him for saying it, precisely because it works. He presses the satchel harder against you. "Go," he says. Not like a hero in a story, like someone asking you to finish an ordinary errand he can no longer complete himself. You cross the pontoon bridge with the satchel inside your jacket, and you do not look back the way you tell yourself you will remember not looking back, for years afterward, in exactly this much detail. The retreat west takes months. Kraus is wounded near Kirovograd in December and evacuated. You never learn what becomes of him afterward. Your remaining unit, reduced to a fraction of its original strength, is finally overrun and captured near the Bug River in the spring of 1944, during another collapse of the line that no communique ever calls a collapse. You spend the next 5 years in a Soviet prisoner camp in the Urals, working timber and rail construction on rations that keep you alive without ever quite feeling like enough.
You keep Otto's satchel wrapped inside your coat lining through every search, every transfer, every winter that takes men around you who seemed stronger than you at the start. Some prisoners in the camp cling to the old certainties even here, insisting the war was lost only through betrayal, that the reports of camps and mass graves reaching them through Soviet newspapers are simply enemy invention. You recognize the instinct immediately, the same reflex your father warned you about in his workshop a lifetime ago, the desire to find a version of events that asks nothing of you. Other prisoners grow quieter with each passing year, the certainty draining out of them the way blood drains from a wound too slow to notice until the weakness arrives all at once. You spend long winter nights turning Otto's unread final pages over in your memory, waiting for the day you'll finally be permitted to read them somewhere other than a labor camp bunk, in a language spoken by someone who isn't a guard. You are released in 1949, one of the later transports home, into a Germany divided, and a Guben divided with it. The nice river that ran through the middle of your hometown is now a border, half the town renamed Guben and folded into Poland, your father's old workshop standing on the wrong side of a line drawn by men who never asked the town's opinion.
Your father did not survive the war's final year. A stray bombing raid on the rail yard where he'd been conscripted for labor killed him in early 1945. Your mother and Greta, now grown, live in a single rebuilt room on the German side, and it is there you finally read every page in Otto's satchel, alone. before you decide what to do with him. Otto's mother, Frau Reiner, still lives 2 streets from where the print shop used to stand. The shop itself gone, the family relocated into what remains of the building's upper floor. She recognizes your name before you finish introducing yourself. Otto mentioned you in every letter that reached home through the official channels. She asks if he suffered. You could offer her the easier version. Instead, you place the satchel on her table. These are the real ones, you say, not what he was allowed to send. Her hands shake as she opens the first page. She asks eventually the question you have spent 5 years in a labor camp preparing to answer honestly, or not at all. Were you with him at the end? Yes. Did you leave him there? Yes. The room goes very still. You explain the barrage, the bridge, Krauss's order, Otto's own insistence. You do not ask forgiveness, because by the time you finish speaking, you understand the explanation already sounds too much like a request for one. He trusted you to bring these, Frau Reiner finally says.
I took 5 years longer than I should have, you answer. She looks at the satchel, then at you. But you brought them. It is not forgiveness. It is not condemnation either. It is only the truth, finally spoken aloud in the room it belonged in. You visit Frau Reiner regularly after that, helping repair what's left of the family's old printing equipment, though there is little demand left for a print shop in a half-destroyed border town. She gives you one of Otto's old maps, hand-drawn from memory, of the streets around Guben as they existed before any of it. The wheelwright shop, the print shop, the loft where 2 boys once turned a radio dial slowly through forbidden static, looking for a version of the truth nobody in power wanted them to find. Decades pass. You rebuild a wheel and axle repair business on the German side of the new border, train your own apprentices, marry a schoolteacher named Hanna, who never asks you for stories you can't tell, and never needs to, because you eventually tell her anyway. You have a son. When he's old enough to ask what you did in the war, you don't tell him you were only following orders. You tell him about a father who warned you not to confuse obedience with virtue, and a friend who wanted the real version remembered, even when the real version made no one look brave.
You tell him about Otto before you tell him about yourself, because that is the order the story actually happened in. You keep no medal, no rank insignia, no photograph of yourself in uniform displayed anywhere in the house. What hangs above your workbench is Otto's hand-drawn map of a town that no longer fully exists under the name either of you knew it by. And beneath it, in a drawer you open perhaps once a year, an empty satchel returned to you by Frau Reiner after her own death, with a note tucked inside that reads simply, "He came home in his own words." That is what you carried. You are 78 when your grandson finds an old field radio at a flea market and brings it to your workshop, more curious about the mechanism than the history. Your son tells him to leave you in peace with it. Instead, you open the casing and begin tracing the wiring the way Otto once did, the smell of hot solder and old dust pulling you backward across 5 decades to a barn loft outside Kharkov, to static resolving slowly into a voice from somewhere the newspapers didn't want you to hear. The radio crackles, then holds a signal. Outside your workshop window, Guben moves through an ordinary evening. Buses, students on bicycles, streetlights coming on over a town rebuilt twice on ground that once burned. You look up at Otto's map on the wall.
For years, you believed the promise was only to deliver the pages. It was always larger than that. The promise was to tell the real version instead of the easier one. To tell Frau Reiner you left him. To tell your son the uniform explained nothing about who you had chosen to be inside it. To remember the ordinary boy who wrote 2 versions of the truth so that at least one of them would survive. Your father told you not to confuse surviving with being right. Otto asked you not to deliver the lies. It takes most of a lifetime to understand they were asking you for exactly the same thing. The radio keeps playing. You close the casing, turn off the workshop light, and step outside into the evening you were never guaranteed you'd live to see.